Mercedes' Dutch Grand Prix was as action-packed as it gets. Both Andrea, Kimi, Antonelli and George Russell were involved in controversial incidents, with Ferrari rival Charles Leclerc as their ex-driver Lewis Hamilton had a run-in with the wall on the outside of Turn 3. In the battle for second place in the Constructors' Championship, it was almost the perfect weekend for Mercedes, if you ignore Antonelli's 15 seconds worth of time penalties that were applied post-race. Despite the young Italian's penalties, Toto Wolff couldn't be prouder of how he ended Leclerc's race, and he's also mocked the fading Red Bull team, declaring their chances of success in the future as basically zero. Today, I'll check all that out, so don't go anywhere. It was a busy weekend at Zandvoort for the Mercedes F1 team. After months of speculation about their lineup for 2026, the team finally confirmed that their drivers would be keeping their seats for next season. Wolff effectively confirmed the lineup after the Dutch Grand Prix, although Russell's contract is still not finalized. Wolff said, "I always say there's not going to be any big news because we're doing this. We're continuing with both of them, of course. With George, there's a few things where we want to optimize some of the traveling and the marketing days, how many hours we're putting in. He's an experienced driver, and for us it's always important to talk about it." Of course, despite what Wolff says, they weren't always going to continue with this lineup. Toto was very keen to get the signature of Max Verstappen, but the reigning world champion has committed to at least one more year with Red Bull, though that might be where the delay on Russell's contract comes from. George will be after a long-term commitment from Mercedes, but Mercedes wants to have a free space if Verstappen decides he's done with Red Bull. George has made it clear in past interviews that that's what he wants and that Mercedes perhaps aren't keen to give it to him, so we'll have to see how that plays out. With the lineup sorted for next season though, Antonelli clearly wanted to celebrate on track. He had his best weekend in a long time, right up until that move on Charles Leclerc late in the race. The time penalties from that collision and a penalty for speeding in the pit lane meant he finished 16th. But Wolff said he had no doubt about the 19-year-old Italian's potential. When we gave him the opportunity, it was also saying that we would give him a year of learning, and there would be moments where we'd tear our hair out, and there would be other moments of brilliance. And I think this weekend pretty much sums that up, Wolff said. "My 100% belief is in him in the long term, and that is just part of the learning." Mercedes admitted before the summer break that Antonelli's poor run of form was their own fault. Upgrades to the car made it too unstable and took away all his confidence, something that is always going to make a rookie driver struggle. With the problems fixed, Antonelli has looked much better, and in Zandvoort, he looked to be on for another points finish before running into Charles Leclerc after what should have been both drivers' final pit stop. As Leclerc fought to hold off both Mercedes drivers for 5th place in the latter stages of the Zandvoort race, Antonelli put pressure on Ferrari with a second pit stop to soft tyres, which Leclerc responded to a lap later. As the Monegasque driver came out in front of Antonelli, the Italian used the momentum of having tyres that were up to temperature to make a lunge on Leclerc down the inside of the bank Turn 3. But on the flatter section of the banking, Antonelli suffered understeer and drifted into the side of Leclerc, punting the Ferrari driver into a spin that ended in the outside wall, ripping off the nose of Leclerc's car. Antonelli escaped with repairable damage, for which he pitted again, but received a 10-second time penalty to drop him out of the points, while also collecting 2 penalty points. When asked about Antonelli's crash, Wolff did apologize to Ferrari, but said he wants his 18-year-old driver to go for the type of overtake he attempted on Leclerc. "I was thinking in the race, what would it have been if Kimi had overtaken a Ferrari? I think the people in Italy would have been happy," Wolff said. Italian fans want an Italian driver that is fighting, that pushes the car to the limit and sometimes over the limit, and that's what happened today. Obviously, from the team's perspective, we don't want to take a Ferrari out, certainly not. And I'm sure that Kimi particularly doesn't want to take a Ferrari out, but it is what it is, it's hard racing. Unfortunate, and I'm sorry for Charles and Ferrari, but we want him to go for the moves and he should. It is a bold statement to say that the Italian fans want to see a Mercedes ahead of a Ferrari, even if it is driven by an Italian driver. Ignoring that though, Wolff has done the right thing to back his driver. Antonelli was rushed into F1 by Mercedes due to Hamilton's early departure from the team, and they have to live with the consequences of that decision. He is raw, but there is clearly talent there that can be nurtured into something impressive. The move he attempted on Leclerc didn't work out this time, but it is the type of move that Mercedes want their drivers to make. They want their drivers to go after overtakes, not sit around trying to wait for something to come their way. However, Antonelli's teething problems are costing Mercedes second in the Constructors' Championship as it stands. The young Italian is 7th in the drivers' standings on 64 points, compared to the 184 for teammate George Russell, while Mercedes trails Ferrari by 12 points. But that's a price Wolff is willing to pay with the bigger picture of 2026's rules reset in mind. We're not fighting for a Constructors' Championship. Of course, it's P2 and P3 that is at stake, but this has less relevance than next year when it's important to score the points, the Austrian explained. Kimi is 18 years old, thrown into this mammoth of a team representing Mercedes. He's going to make mistakes. You always wish that the learning has less humps and bumps than it has today, because the swings are enormous. But the potential is there, and we have no doubts. My 100% belief is in him in the long term. While Wolff may not be overly worried about whether his team finishes P2 or P3, there is money at stake, and another of Mercedes' long-term rivals, Red Bull, are only just behind them in P4. However, Wolff isn't expecting them to be a problem for long, saying that ex-boss Christian Horner's terrible decision-making is going to stop them being a threat in the future. Before I check that out though, if you're enjoying the video and want to catch more news and analysis on this F1 season, then make sure to press the like button and subscribe to F1 Reverse. Thanks a lot. Red Bull were the second highest scorers at the Dutch Grand Prix last weekend. A 20-point haul that keeps them in touch with Mercedes and Ferrari in the Constructors' Championship. It is a real fall from grace for Red Bull, who just 2 seasons ago had the most dominant car ever seen in Formula 1. Next year though, their competitive prospects look even worse than they have this season. That's partly to be expected given the major rule changes which should bring all the teams closer together, but the Milton Keynes outfit are also in a unique position. In an interview over the Dutch Grand Prix weekend, Mercedes boss Toto Wolff was asked about Red Bull building their own engine next year. Since entering F1 in 2005, they've always been a customer team, working with Cosworth, Ferrari, Renault and Honda. But they've now set up a Red Bull powertrains division, a process Wolff likened to climbing Mount Everest. At one point, Red Bull just needed to add a signature to a deal that would have seen Porsche take control of 50% of the team and build their engines from 2026 onwards. But Horner torpedoed the deal, much to the annoyance of the now Red Bull CEO Oliver Mintzlaff, the man who eventually fired Horner this year. My first answer would be that's Mount Everest to climb because our engine departments have grown over tens of years, Wolff said. And I think how the Red Bull engine was born is because Christian wasn't keen to have a Porsche relationship. So the deal was almost done, that Porsche would own 50% of the team, they would mirror the management side that Red Bull had in there, and they would provide the power unit, and I think that was agreed between the top 2 guys, Wolfgang Porsche and Dietrich Mateschitz, and then that didn't happen. Horner's decision is likely to cause new boss Laurent Mekies a lot of headaches next season. Horner had constantly complained about the new engine regulations, and no doubt that came from a place of concern over how his team would perform. It's like twisting the knife into Horner's back, but Wolff is right to say that Red Bull have to do the equivalent of climbing Mount Everest to be competitive with their first engine. It is a decision that the team could come to regret next season. What did you think of Antonelli's move on Leclerc at Zandvoort? And are you worried about Red Bull next season? Let me know what you think in the comments down below, and until next time, drive safe and bye for now.